So I have been trying the Dita Activo Q1 and the Project M for a while now, and the results are quite interesting. Let's talk about it. Welcome back, audiophiles. It's me, your boy Joe, back again with another video, and this time we're actually going to be comparing the Dita Activo Q1 as well as the Dita Project M to see what the real differences are and should you or should you not buy the Dita Activo Q1. And if you're new to the channel, welcome everyone. My name is Joe and we'll be reviewing audio gear such as the Dita Activo Q1 and any other kind of interesting gear, so do stay tuned for that. Click on the subscribe and bonk the bell. So before we get started out, I would like to tell you that both the Dita Activo Q1 as well as the Dita Project M is been graciously given to me by two friends. Those two friends are from the Discord channel. Remember, the Discord link is down below. Do join in so you can learn anything related to audio and you can talk to me directly. So regarding the Dita Activo Q1, this is currently in their website for $300, but in India, this Dita Activo Q1 comes as low as $190. And I'm not sure how long the deal will last for, but as of now, it's $190 in India, while in other places like in the UK, it's actually £300. As for the Dita Project M, this is currently on for $325 as of their website. Before we get to the specs and the nitty-gritties of all of this, let's get to the unboxing of the Dita Project M. So, time to unbox the Dita Project M. As you can see, we have branding all over it, hybrid in-ear wired earphones, and I guess this is the frequency response graph. On the back side, we have the specifications, 1DD 1BA with a dynamic driver, frequency response, impedance, and sensitivity. This box has this kind of cloth feel to it, which is really nice. Feels really premium. And inside we have the paperwork. So this is, I think it's a poster of some sort, or okay, this is just a full catalog of all the stuff of the Dita. And yeah, this is the poster of the Project M, if you are into that. We have the warranty card, and we have the box itself. So we have the Dita, we have the box, we even have extra plugs, we have the 4.4, and we even have a USB-C DAC based plug. Let's see the box later. And we have our final E ear tips. As you can see, it has a resin shell. You could even see the stainless steel driver inside and the logo on top. The shell is a bit yellowed because this is an older unit, but you could imagine this one being super see-through if it is brand new. This is the cable that comes along with it. As you can see, once again, because this is an older cable, we have a bit of oxidization, but pretty much the cable is fine in terms of audio quality. And we're already having the 3.5 connected to it. And if I were to switch the connections, let's see that I'm going to be using the 4.4 this time. I would unscrew this, and then you could pull this out and put the new one in. Match the notches. Once you match the notch to a little bit, you don't have to push it all the way in. You could just screw this again, and the screw itself should pull it into place. Here are the final ear tips. They also glow in the dark, by the way. And that's pretty much it. So as you can see with the unboxing, we get the IMs, we get the cable associated to it. The cable is called the conductor cable. Do keep all of this in mind because there's a reason to all of this. So we have the conductor cable and we have termination plugs which can be changed to a 3.5mm jack as well as a 4.4, and there is a USB-C jack which will come for the Dita Project M. In terms of the carry case, you could see that we have a Thanos sustainer carry case. It's pretty good. It can hold in the IMs pretty fine. It has rubber lining inside. The only problem I have with the carry case is that the space is really small, so even for the IEMs you kind of have to bend it over and squeeze it in for it to fit inside, and heaven forbid if you have even something as a DAC in here, you won't be able to fit anything else in here. So that's a bit of a problem. And with regards to the case itself, the case is supposed to be something that you should close and spin this lock so that it's locked into place. But if you notice, after it's locked into place, I could just simply squeeze a little bit and it opens. So there is no use of this particular lock. I could even close it with this particular lock. So the spin lock, I don't even know why do they have such a design, but it's a thing. And as for the box itself, it's stackable. So as you can see, we have the exact box for the Activo, and you can stack it on top of another and make this kind of organized section in here. Well, enough said about the Project M. You are here for the Activo Q1, and that is where everything comes in. The Activo Q1 comes in this beautiful kind of resin shell. But hold on, this resin shell is exactly the resin shell that comes for the Project M. If you look the shell side by side, I will show a photo in here. You can see that the contours of the resin shell is exactly as per the contours of the Project M. They take the exact design elements, including the logo positioning as well as the contours and the nozzle length. So moving on from the IEM size themselves, if I want to talk about the specs, this is where things get interesting. So the Dita Activo Q1 comes in a 9.8 dynamic driver with a Knowles balanced armature. Now, if I were to talk about the Dita Project M, it comes with the 9.8 dynamic driver and a Knowles balanced armature. And in fact, the driver is a 9.8 mm P1 Plus driver, which is exactly the same driver for the Q1 as well as the Project M. However, in the Q1, a difference I would like to note is if you do notice very closely, the astute people among you would see that the dynamic driver in the Project M is covered in a kind of a stainless steel shell, whereas for the Q1, we have this kind of white shell element. This white shell is actually a brass shell, which is powder coated in a white kind of color. That would be the difference that I see, which is between the Activo Q1 as well as the Project M. In terms of the ear tips provided, the ear tips is also the same Final E ear tips that is given with the Project M. And bonus point, this Final E ear tips is actually a glow in the dark ear tips. So if you're into that, that's a plus point for you. And from this shell, let's move on with the cable. Now, as you can see, this cable is nice and white because this is a fresh IEM, which I hope that this doesn't get any damages whatsoever. But this cable is also the same kind of cable that comes in the Dita Project M. It comes in a pretty slender cable, which is not that much to my liking, and it has a wide split, which is kind of that knurled wide split, which is similar to those from the other Dita series, such as the Dita Prelude. Do check out that video if you haven't already. Once again, even with the Dita Activo, there is no chin slider, which is also the same for the Project M. And from this cable, we could see that it has a double braided ending towards a jack, which is also a modular jack, which you can change from 4.4 to 3.5. There is no USB-C DAC in this particular cable, but this cable is also conductors bicardos cable, which means it's also the same cable as that of the Project M. The only difference I would see based on this particular cable from the Q1 to the Project M is that this one is a 32 strand conductor bicardos cable, whereas the Project M is a 16 strand cable. Now this, if it is actually having any difference to the thickness of the cable itself, I would show you a photo side by side where you could see there's practically no difference from the thickness of the cable in the Q1 as for that compared to the Project M. They say that it's a 32 strand cable. Whether it's true or not, probably it is. Maybe they've tightly put it together so it's pretty much the same thickness of the Project M. So you can see where I'm going with the comparison in terms of pure specs, that the Q1 is really similar in construction to the Project M, and hence there's also the liabilities of the design of the Project M that would surely come to this Q1. So since the design elements are so similar, that means the drawbacks of these elements will also be similar. As you can see in here, the resin shell will yellow over time, and there would be oxidization that will begin on the cable plug points location. The overall cable would start to get yellowing in terms of the Project M. That will also inevitably happen for the Q1, where this particular location would certainly get oxidized, whereas the resin shell, if it is the same exact resin shell creation process, then this resin shell will also end up yellowing over time. So over and all, for both the Project M and for the Q1, I kind of don't like the cable. The cable quality is not to my liking, and there's no chin slider. This is kind of like the same pattern that's happening in most of the Dita lineup so far, but the good point is that the cable termination can be swapped, and you could get either 4.4 or 3.5. And fun fact, the USB-C DAC of the Project M can also fit in the Activo Q1. So time to put these bad boys on. In terms of fit, I would say the fit is actually pretty deep. If you're using the Final E ear tips, which I'm showing you in here, we get a very deep, significant fit. So in terms of sealing, it's really good. Maybe in terms of comfort, would not be the best for you. I would show you another ear tip which I would be using, and that's how I have actually used it in the long run. But nevertheless, for this case, this is the right side, and this is the left side. So style-wise, it's really good. I do like the resin finish, and it has really good design elements, which is there. And the cable, when it's new, the cable white is also matching with the Dita, and that's also really nice to see. And if you see from my previous video, if you use a Velcro tag from your cable, you could use it as a makeshift chin slider. You'll be well and good in that department, or you just change the cables itself. The Final E ear tips are really good. I do feel a very good seal with it, but if you want a more comfortable factor, you could go for these kind of shallow fit style ear tips, such as these double flanged ear tips that's from Noble Audio, or you could even go for ear tips like the Tangsu narrow bore ear tips, so that will also work. But these ones are really comfortable. They have a very good seal. This one is the Project M. I just wanted to show you that side by side. Fits nice and snugly once you're using the Noble Audio ear tips. Once again, no chin slider, so can't do anything. But here's the right side, and here's the left side. So since both of these shells are exactly the same, comfort-wise, exactly the same, so I could wear them for long hours. It's really good. It's not that much of a pressure point here or there, provided I switch the ear tips. If you use a Final E, you would start to get slow pressure buildup because of that very tight fit. And in terms of packaging, I couldn't show the Activo because the Activo is just given to me with this case from my friend, but in terms of whatever's inside, the Activo also comes with a 3.5 and a 4.4 jack inside the box, and the cable and whatever that was there is pretty much it, similar to how the Project M goes. And even the box, as you can see here, this one is the Thanos Sustainer 3 box, which is exactly the box, except that the branding would be different. It has this Activo Dita written here, whereas for the Project M, it just says Dita, and they're exactly the same, which is why they can be stacked on top of the other, and pretty neat in that case. So that's what I like. Now with the cables and all of its accessories attached, it's time to move on to the sound impressions. As per usual, for the sound impressions, we'll be looking at the frequency response graph of the Activo Dita Q1. Since there's not that many graphs present, I was taking the best graph, and this is one of the better graphs out there. This is with courtesy of Elrix. I'm currently using the graph with the precog vision target, and you would see why later on. But as for now, let's look at the graph together. We have a very good sub-bass region, which then trickles down to a good clean mid-range, and then actually comes up to a good sense of vocal and presence overall. This relates to a very clean bass response, which is well controlled, and a very clean mid, and the vocals are forward because of this kind of treble response, and the vocals are very clean. This is, after all, a kind of vocal centric IEM, I would say, and then it has sparkly highs as well, so you get that crispy micro details of the treble. Now I'll be showing you the Project M frequency response. Blink and you would miss it. Now let's see here. Did you get that? No? If not, let me tell you. The Dita Project M is having a very good clean sub bass, which then goes down to a nice straight mids and then goes off to a little bit of trebles and sparkly highs. Now, this is actually somewhat similar to the Activo Q1. If not somewhat, it is really similar. And since these particular frequency response graphs are actually from different people, I have actually done an experiment where I put the two graphs together based on a common target. In this case, the common target was this precog vision target. So the next graph I'm going to show you is just a graph that I made. You could take whatever I'm saying with as much as salt as you want. This is just for me to show you how the signatures are when I just put them together with a common target. So in this particular graph, the dark blue is the Project M and the light blue is the Activo Q1. And as you can see, the line is so similar with each other and it goes off to a mid-range, which is exactly on top of each other. But the slightest of variations is in the treble response range, where that the Q1 is slightly higher than the Project M in certain places. But they overall have the same air region. And there's a little bit of an extra spike that you could see in the Project M, but that is in the higher regions, which I could either account to as unit variance, or usually the treble region will not be recorded as consistently as you want. So there could be minor variations in there. But over and all, this Q1 is so similar to the Project M in many aspects. And I noticed that while listening to the songs. It is, I would dare say, bit to bit matching for the Project M. If you were to extremely nitpick on it, and if you were to do exact A/B testing on the Project M and the Q1, you would see the minute of variations, which I would get to in a minute. Once again, I'm telling you, don't quote me on this particular graph. It's just for me to explain to you how the signatures are really close to, I would say, 95% similarities. Enough said with the sound impressions. It's time to play some music on these things and compare them side by side. So before we get into the song impressions, I wanted to tell you about how I'm driving these things. I am using the Dita Activo Q1 with the ear tips which is provided. I'm using the final E for both of them in this case. And both the final E ear tips is the same size, and the Q1 is on its standard stock cable. And the termination jack for both of them is going to be the 4.4. In terms of the source, I'm going to be using my MUSE M5 Ultra, which is connected to my MacBook, and I'll be playing the Apple Music in lossless. So both of them is going to be in its same setting and as consistent as possible in both cases. So the first song that we're going to listen to is Download the Revolution by Rocky Dawuni. This one is a really good song, is from the FIFA 2010 soundtrack. The link of my public playlist is down in the descriptions below, so you could check out all the songs that I'm listening to for my reviews. In this case, I would say that the bass line is really well controlled and a very good quality sub bass rhythm to it. And it's not going to be a rumbling, visceral level of sub bass, but it is a sub bass that you can feel, you can enjoy. The texture of that sub bass is really good. The bass slam, I would say, is okay. There is a very good sense of a bass slam in it. The mids are super clean and the vocals is the one which takes the stage. The song itself is a laid back sort of song which you can just feel the rhythm into, and all the individual instruments are very well separated in here. I feel that there is a very good sense of soundstage in here. You can immerse yourself in the music, you can crank the volume to a very good level. Since I am using a warm source, I'm not having any kind of sharpness or treble responses from both the Q1 and for the Project M for that matter. There will be a high-pitched note that will be played around the music, and that note is perceived so well in the Activo Q1. Now, let me use the Project M and then listen to the same song and get back to you. So now I've listened to the whole thing with the Project M, and I could tell you 95, if not even more than that, I would say that the sound signature is really similar. If you were to just simply give this to me, and if I'm not even focusing on the song and doing something else, I couldn't tell if I'm listening to the Project M or if I'm listening to the Q1. In this case, if I were to nitpick so hard and did A/B testing 1 and 2 continuously back and forth, I could say that there's a very slight difference when it comes to the extreme upper ends of the treble. So in this case, if I were to listen to the Download Your Revolution, there is a tambourine that will be on a slow rhythm throughout the song. In the Activo, that tambourine is smooth and, once again, really clear. There is a very slight extra crisp when you're using it for the Project M. Very, very slight extra crisp. You could feel a little bit of an extra air in it. When it comes to the vocals, I could barely tell the difference between the vocals. The vocals of both the Q1 and the Project M is really, really similar in nature. Especially in terms of the bass response. The bass response is at most exact ditto the same. And the sub bass, maybe I could account for a little bit of a change, but honestly, that could be just my placebo taking effect in here. So overall, the song is an excellent song. Do check it out. And it is rendered beautifully well with both the Q1 and the Project M together. I would say that. So the next song that we're going to look at is Drag Me Down by OneDirection. And this one is a very nice song because it has a lot of different elements to it. There is a distorted electric guitar, which is actually in the lower ends. And there is a good sub bass line that comes all throughout the song with a very good rhythm to it. So currently I'm using the Project M to listen to it. And with this, I would say that the bass line is pretty good. The vocals are coming out forward, and some of the higher frequency elements of the drum kits is really perceived well with the Project M. I would say that the vocals is forward, center, very clear. But the electric guitar in here is actually somewhat pushed down. Maybe it's because it's in the sub bass regions, but the electric guitar is pushed down, a bit smoothened, but I am able to hear it and I can make out the different elements to it. I like it when the claps comes in the main drops, and that clap is actually really nice and sharp. It's not the sharp that I would hate, but this is the sharp which is really nice, precise and clear. So that is something that I really like about it. Now I'm going to be trying the Q1 with this. So when using the Q1, once again, it's pretty much the same thing all throughout. In order to maintain consistency, by the way, I even tried doing wires changing, where I've changed the Q1 with this particular wire, which is set to have more cores, for the wire which is present for the Dita Project M. And once again, the differences I find is barely anything. I do find no difference whatsoever when it comes to these kind of wire switching. That I could say that probably this 32-16 strand thing ain't making much of a difference in this case. But if I were to really nitpick and try to focus so hard, I do notice that the electric guitar, which has been smoothened to a level in the Project M, is actually a bit more clearer in the Q1. The vocals are actually a little bit forward for the Q1. This could be due to the fact of that extra vocal increase that is compared to the Project M, as you could see in there. But nevertheless, the overall sound signature and the overall experience was really much the same. There's a lot of micro details for both the Q1 and the Project M. I was able to hear out all the little minute micro details that were present in both of them. The song was really good. I was able to enjoy it. The bass line, yeah, this is not a bass head's IM, that's for sure for both these cases. I wasn't able to rock my head to the bass, but it's something that I was able to enjoy, able to listen more towards the vocals, and able to see more of the nuances of the song altogether. So excellent song, nice rendition from both the Q1 and the Project M. Okay, so the last song that we're going to look at, or shall I say the last music piece that we're going to look at, is Dragonborn by Jeremy Soule. So it's pretty evident that I am a very good gamer at heart and I love Skyrim to death, and I've been playing ages with Skyrim. Very nice game, very good music to match. This is an orchestral piece, so there's a lot of layers that goes on in here, and I do say the Project M and the Activo Q1 for that matter really does well when it comes to orchestrals. The strings and the texture of that string is really well defined. I do really like those strings when it's being played. The expressions, the emotions of those instruments, it's felt so well when I'm listening with both the Project M and the Q1. In here, if I want to try nitpicking between the differences of the Project and the Q1, honestly, I can't tell the differences because both of them did so well in that regard. Probably I would give a little bit of an edge to the Q1 because maybe, once again, with my placebo talking in here, I feel like the Q1's strings was a little bit more sharper when compared to the Project M. but that was only after a huge amount of nitpicking when I'm trying to do, once again, with all the A/B testing. I do keep the volume as well consistent with both of them, so both of them don't even have any volume change. And in this case, the Q1 was really good, and even the Project M, the strings and the overall bass, the bass is not much. Once again, the bass is controlled, it's good, it's in a subdued environment, but more importance is given to the higher range instruments. So in that case, the vocals came out really well. You could clearly hear both the female and the male vocals in here, with the female vocals coming a little bit on the top, but overall, I really loved the way that songs are being played. I really loved how the strings built up to such the extent, and excellent piece altogether for the Dragonborn series, and something really good to listen to with both the Q1 and the Project M. So what are my overall impressions for the Activo Dita Q1? Well, when it comes down to it, as you can see with the overall theme, it is very much similar to how the Project M is. If you like that Project M style signature and you're on that kind of a budget, then of course Q1. So would you go for that extra $150 from the Q1 to the Project M for that super minute, if not even perceivable differences? Well, certainly not. If you want to get a Project M style signature and you're able to get the Q1, which is close to half at this point, then by all means you could go for the Q1 when you're in India, because this is $300 when you're looking at it elsewhere. So in that perspective, if I were to see in the international scale of things, then for that extra $25, do they make a difference? Honestly, not, because the cable is supposedly the same. Even though they say that this is 32 core, that means the Activo is supposedly better than the Q1 in terms of cable quality, and the shell, the elements, they're all pretty much the same. Then if you take all of that into consideration, then probably the only defining factor would be the USB-C DAC of the Project M. Speaking of the USB-C DAC, that also comes to the point which I want to make on that. I have tried the USB-C DAC for both the Q1 and for the Project M, and honestly, they do run really well. In terms of sound signature, I didn't want to bring it up that much because I want to bring the focus on bringing with the Q1 by itself with the gear that you're using and the Project M. If that USB-C DAC is your defining factor, then maybe considering that the USB-C DAC is the extra $25, you could go for the Project M. Who knows? But as for me, for my particular package, I'm really not happy with this cable. Once again, Dita is following on that particular pattern with the cable not being as good. It is subjective to a lot of oxidization, as you could see in here. And the shells themselves, really beautiful shells. Although my little qualm is that they are yellowing over time because this one is a resin shell. So considering all of that, and it's a really good IEM overall in terms of sound quality. It's having a vocal centric approach, which is not to my particular preferences, but hey, if people like the vocal centric approach, then by all means you could get the Activo Q1. So with all that said, what is my overall rating? Well, sadly, with the cable at this particular rate and considering the expense that you're paying for this thing, and it's going to be yellowing over time, I'm going to have to give the Q1 and the Project M for that matter a 3.5 out of 5, purely because it's not to my particular preference range. And at this price point, when you're having a cable that is surely degrading over time and the shell itself is changing over time, compared to IEMs which are in the expensive side, but they will stay exactly the way they are over the time, such as metal body shells or even other resin shells for that matter, then I'll have to give this particular rating for it. But yeah, on the whole, if you're able to get the Q1, by all means you could get the Q1 if you want that kind of signature that the Project M used to provide. With all that said, that's it for my particular review. Do let me know, are you having both the Project M and the Q1 at your disposal? If you are, what are you finding? Can you find any differences between the Project M and the Q1? I would love to hear what you're saying down at the comments below. And as usual, if you do like my videos, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like my videos, give me a thumbs down. I don't know. Until then, this is Joe, and I will see you in the next review. Peace.